That sun was a hammer, beating down on the Montana prairie in 1885. The air shimmered, thick with heat and grief. A small cemetery on the edge of Silver Creek was packed with folks in black, sweat dripping down their faces as a preacher's words drifted over a fresh grave. Rebecca Mitchell stood frozen, her black veil a dark cloud over her face. Her knuckles were white, clutching a worn Bible. Her kids, Emma and Joshua, huddled beside her, little ghosts in the brutal light. 6-year-old Emma, with her hair like spun gold, clung to her mom's skirt. 4-year-old Joshua stood unnaturally still, his small face blank with confusion. The funeral was over. The mourners shuffled away, whispering condolences that Rebecca didn't hear. She was staring at a simple wooden cross. Daniel Mitchell, 1850, 1885, beloved husband and father. The words were a brand on her soul. Suddenly, a shadow fell over the grave. Mason Bradley, the fat cat owner of the Silver Creek mine, stood there in a suit that looked way too expensive for a cemetery. His eyes were cold as silver ore. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said, his voice carrying, "regrettable business, this accident, but life continues, as does commerce." Rebecca's head snapped up. She knew what was coming. "I'll need you to vacate the company house within the week," Bradley said. "There's a new foreman arriving." "A week?" Rebecca's voice trembled. "My husband is barely in the ground." "His employment ended with his death, Mrs. Mitchell. The house is company property." "Daniel gave 10 years to your mine," she shot back. "Surely you can give us a little time?" Bradley's face was a mask of impatience. The terms were clear in his contract. Business is business. A few lingering miners shifted uncomfortably. They had worked with Daniel. Their faces were guarded, their silence a heavy weight. They knew what it was to cross Bradley. "Where are we supposed to go?" Rebecca's hand found Joshua's shoulder, holding on tight. Bradley adjusted his silk tie. "That's hardly my concern, Mrs. Mitchell. Maybe if your husband hadn't been so vocal about these ridiculous notions of workers' rights, he might have provided better for you." He leaned in, his voice a low sneer. "Some might say his agitation contributed to the unfortunate circumstances of his death." The accusation was a knife in her heart. A white-hot rage, not from the sun, burned through her. Before she could think, her hand lashed out. It connected with Bradley's cheek with a crack that silenced the entire cemetery. His hand flew to his face, his eyes bulging. "How dare you?" he sputtered. "How dare you?" Rebecca fired back, her voice shaking but clear. "Slander my husband at his own grave." Bradley's face turned a dangerous shade of purple. "You'll regret that, Mrs. Mitchell. You have until sundown, not a week. After that, I'll have Sheriff Wyatt escort you out." He turned to the stunned crowd. "Let this be a lesson in respecting one's betters." As he stormed away, the full weight of her act crashed down. She had just condemned herself and her children to immediate homelessness. Emma was trembling against her skirt. "Mama, where will we go?" Rebecca knelt, pulling them close, forcing a calmness she didn't feel. "Don't worry, my loves, we'll find a place." She looked into their trusting faces and prayed her words weren't a lie. They had until sundown. She had just ruined everything, and she didn't know how to fix it. 3 days later, Rebecca sat on the back steps of the church, watching her children. Emma and Joshua were picking through the scraps behind Callahan's saloon. The sight of them, once well-fed and cared for, now scavenging like stray dogs, was a brand on her heart. The few things they'd salvaged from their home were in a small cart borrowed from a sympathetic church caretaker. Most of the town had turned their backs, scared of Bradley's wrath or believing the rumors that Rebecca had driven Daniel to a dangerous rebellion. Reverend Thompson had let them sleep in the church vestibule, but his charity was clearly strained. Emma came back with half a loaf of stale bread, her once clean dress smudged with dirt. "Look, Mama," she said with a forced brightness, "enough for all of us." Rebecca's heart ached. "That's wonderful, darling. Share it with Joshua." Emma carefully broke the bread, giving her silent brother the bigger piece. Joshua still hadn't spoken since his father died. He took the bread with a small, sad nod. A long shadow fell over them. Sheriff Wyatt stood there, his badge gleaming, his hand resting on his gun. "Mrs. Mitchell," he drawled, Got some business to discuss. Rebecca stood, putting herself between him and her kids. What business? Wyatt's thin lips curved in a smile. Been receiving complaints about vagrants in town, particularly ones teaching their young'uns to steal. We've stolen nothing, Rebecca said sharply. Those are discarded scraps. Well, Wyatt said, there's also the matter of proper care for those children. A woman alone, no means of support. Town council's concern. Cold fear gripped her spine. What are you implying? There's a home for orphans in Helena. They take in children whose parents can't provide. Might be the best place for them. Rebecca's voice turned to ice. My children are not orphans, Sheriff. They have a mother who is perfectly capable. Are you now? Wyatt chuckled. From where I'm standing, you can't put a roof over their heads or food in their bellies. That's neglect in the eyes of the law. The law? Rebecca's laugh was bitter. Or Mason Bradley's version of it. Wyatt's face hardened. Careful, Mrs. Mitchell. I'm giving you fair warning. Find a proper situation by the end of the week, or I'll be forced to take action. As he walked away, panic raced through her. She had no family, no friends who dared defy Bradley. Her nursing skills could get her work, but not fast enough. Not with two small children. Mama? Emma's small voice cut through her thoughts. Are they going to take us away? Rebecca knelt, holding them tight. No, my loves. I won't let that happen. Never. She said the words, but she had no idea how she could possibly keep them. The clock was ticking, and she was out of options. From across the street, a tall figure watched the whole exchange. Gabriel Hayes stood in the shadow of the general store's awning. The scar that ran from his temple down his left cheek caught the fading light as he studied the desperate mother and her children. When Wyatt passed by, Gabriel stepped deeper into the shadows. The sheriff had a way of investigating newcomers, especially those who kept to themselves like Gabriel did. He'd only come to town for supplies, preferring the isolation of his ranch 20 miles away, on the border between settled land and Blackfoot territory. As dusk fell, Gabriel watched Rebecca and her kids. He watched her approach several businesses, only to be turned away each time. Finally, shoulders slumped in defeat, she returned to the church steps and began making a makeshift bed from their blankets. That's when Gabriel made his decision. He crossed the street, his footsteps deliberate. Rebecca looked up sharply, pulling Joshua behind her. He stopped at a respectful distance. Up close, she could see him better. Tall and broad-shouldered, with weathered skin and steady gray-green eyes. The scar on his face pulled at the corner of his mouth when he spoke. Ma'am, he said, his voice low and steady, I couldn't help overhearing your predicament. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. And you are? Gabriel Hayes. I have a ranch outside of town. I need someone to help with the household. Position comes with room and board for all of you. Rebecca stiffened. I don't accept charity, Mr. Hayes. A hint of respect flickered in his eyes. It's not charity. It's employment. I need help. You need work. Simple arrangement. Why would you offer a position to a stranger, a woman with two children who would be more burden than help? Gabriel's gaze flicked to Sheriff Wyatt, who was watching them from across the street. I've a need for someone with medical knowledge. Word is you were a nurse during the war. Rebecca hesitated. The offer was too convenient, too perfectly timed. Yet what choice did she have? And my children? The ranch has plenty of room. They'd be safe there. Safer than here at any rate. Emma tugged her skirt. Please, Mama. I don't want the sheriff to take us away. Rebecca looked down at her pleading daughter and her silent, fearful son. She thought of Daniel and what he would want her to do. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. When would we leave? She asked. Now, Gabriel replied. I have a wagon ready. We can be well on our way before full dark. Rebecca took a deep breath. Very well, Mr. Hayes. We accept your offer, temporarily, until I can make other arrangements. Gabriel nodded once. Get your things. I'll bring the wagon around. As he walked away, Rebecca knelt before her children. We're going to Mr. Hayes's ranch for a little while. It will be an adventure. Is he a good man, Mama? Emma whispered. Rebecca looked after Gabriel's retreating form. I don't know, darling, she said softly, but right now, he's our only chance. The wagon creaked along the dusty trail, pulling them away from Silver Creek and into the gathering darkness. Rebecca sat rigid beside Gabriel on the driver's bench. The kids huddled in the back. The rhythmic clip-clop of the horse's hooves was the only sound for miles. Neither adult seemed inclined to break the silence. Rebecca studied Gabriel's profile. The scar was less prominent in the fading light, but the stern set of his jaw told her this was a man who knew hardship. His hands, calloused from hard work, handled the reins with surprising gentleness. "How far is your ranch?" she finally asked. "About 4 hours' ride," Gabriel replied. "We'll be there well before midnight." "And what exactly will my duties entail?" "Household management, cooking, medical attention for injuries or illness." He glanced at her. "I understand you have experience with more than just basic nursing." "I served in field hospitals during the war," Rebecca confirmed cautiously. "But that was years ago." "Skills like that don't fade," he said. "They'll be useful." "Are there many people who require medical attention?" she pressed. A slight pause. "Enough." Rebecca frowned at his reticence, but decided not to push. Instead, she looked back at her children. Emma was dozing. Joshua was awake, his dark eyes reflecting the starlight, staring up at the vast Montana sky. "Your boy doesn't speak," Gabriel observed quietly. "He hasn't since his father died." Gabriel nodded. "The mind protects itself how it can." Before she could respond, he pulled sharply on the reins, bringing the wagon to a halt. Tension radiated from him. "What is it?" Rebecca whispered, alarm rising in her throat. He raised a hand for silence, his eyes scanning the darkness. Slowly, he reached beneath the seat and withdrew a rifle. The movement was fluid and practiced. "Stay here. Keep the horses steady." He climbed down, rifle at the ready. Rebecca's heart hammered in her chest. A voice called out from the darkness in a language she didn't recognize. Gabriel responded in the same tongue, his voice calm and respectful. From the shadows, 3 mounted men emerged. Their distinctive dress and proud posture left no doubt. Blackfoot warriors. Fear shot through Rebecca. The newspapers in Silver Creek were full of stories about Indian raids. Gabriel continued speaking, gesturing toward the wagon. One of the warriors, clearly the leader, replied, his eyes flickering to Rebecca and the children. To her astonishment, Gabriel extended his hand, and the leader clasped it, a gesture of respect. More words were exchanged, and then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the warriors melted back into the darkness. Gabriel returned to the wagon and stowed the rifle. "We can continue now," he said, taking the reins. "Those were Blackfoot warriors," Rebecca said, a tremor in her voice. "Yes. You speak their language." Gabriel glanced at her. "It's useful to speak with your neighbors." "Most settlers wouldn't consider them neighbors." "Most settlers are fool," he replied simply. Rebecca studied him with new eyes. "They let us pass without trouble. They seem to respect you." Gabriel was silent for a long moment. "I've earned a measure of trust. It wasn't given easily, nor should it be." "Are we near their territory?" "My ranch borders their hunting grounds. We have an understanding." His tone suggested the subject was closed. Rebecca settled back, her mind reeling. Gabriel Hayes was not the typical Montana rancher. His ability to speak with the Blackfoot, the respect between them, these were extraordinary things. As the wagon continued its journey, she felt a strange sense of having crossed an invisible boundary. Behind them lay Silver Creek, with its rigid rules and Bradley's tyranny. Ahead lay something unknown, Gabriel Hayes's ranch and whatever secrets it held. For the first time since her husband's death, her son Joshua was showing interest in something. He was watching Gabriel with an intense curiosity. The first rays of dawn broke over the mountains as the wagon crested a rise, revealing Gabriel's ranch spread out below them. Rebecca, who had dozed fitfully, straightened with interest. The ranch sat in a sheltered valley, a substantial log house at its center. A barn, corral, and several outbuildings surrounded it. Fields stretched to the north and south. A stream wound through a stand of cottonwoods. Beyond the western edge, the land rose toward the wild, untamed mountains. "Welcome to Willow Creek Ranch," Gabriel said, guiding the horses down the slope. The place was well established and prosperous, far more than she had expected. As they approached, movement caught her eye. A tall black man emerged from the barn, followed by a woman with dark hair carrying a basket of eggs. They watched the wagons approach. "You have other workers," Rebecca observed. Not workers, Gabriel corrected gently. Residents. Isaiah helps with the livestock and security. Maria manages the kitchen garden and chickens. The wagon rolled to a stop. Gabriel set the brake and offered a hand to Rebecca, which she ignored, climbing down unassisted. Isaiah approached, his posture careful and contained. Up close, Rebecca could see gray threading through his close-cropped hair and beard. His eyes were dark and intelligent. Isaiah, Gabriel said, this is Mrs. Rebecca Mitchell and her children. They'll be staying with us. Mrs. Mitchell has medical training. Isaiah nodded, his expression warming. Ma'am, welcome to Willow Creek. His voice was deep and cultured, surprising her. Maria stepped forward next, a woman a few years older than Rebecca with striking features and eyes that missed nothing. Welcome, she said, her accent revealing her Mexican heritage. You must be exhausted. There's breakfast ready, and I've prepared rooms for you. A young boy of about 8 darted from behind Maria. This is my son, Daniel, Maria said, resting a hand on his shoulder. Rebecca felt a pang at the name. Thank you, Rebecca managed, her voice strained with fatigue. Gabriel nodded to Maria. Show them to their rooms. They can rest before we discuss arrangements. As Maria led them to the house, Rebecca glanced back to see Gabriel and Isaiah in quiet conversation, both men occasionally looking in her direction. The sense that she had stepped into something far more complex than a simple job grew stronger. The house's interior was as impressive as its exterior. The main room was spacious with a large stone fireplace, solid furniture, and shelves lined with books. A staircase led to the upper floor. This will be your room, Maria said, leading them to a door off the main room. The children can have the small adjoining room. Rebecca stepped inside. The room was clean and comfortable, with a proper bed, a washstand, and a small writing desk. A connecting door led to a smaller room with 2 narrow beds. This is very generous, Rebecca said, struggling to reconcile this with her expectations. Maria smiled, her watchful eyes softening. Gabriel believes in providing properly for people. Take your time to settle in. Food will be waiting when you're ready. When Maria had gone, Rebecca sat heavily on the edge of the bed, the exhaustion of the past few days crashing over her. Emma explored the room, touching the quilt and peering out the window. Mama, it's so nice here, she whispered. Joshua stood in the doorway of their room, his expression unreadable. Rebecca held out her arms and he came to her. It's just temporary, she reminded them both, and herself. But as she smoothed Joshua's hair and watched Emma's excitement, she wondered what kind of man Gabriel Hayes truly was to offer such generosity to strangers and what he expected in return. A new and unsettling mystery had just begun. After washing away the dust of the journey and changing into her cleanest dress, Rebecca led her children to the kitchen. The aroma of coffee and fresh bread guided them. The kitchen was large and well-equipped, filled with morning light. Maria was kneading dough at a flour-dusted table, while her son, Daniel, sat shelling peas. He looked up, offering a shy smile to Emma and Joshua. You're just in time, Maria said. The coffee is fresh, and there's bread, eggs, and bacon keeping warm. Rebecca hesitated. I should be helping, not being served. Maria wiped her hands on her apron. There will be plenty of time for work. Gabriel insists on proper hospitality. Reluctantly, Rebecca allowed them to be seated. The portions were generous, the food aromatic. Emma ate immediately. Joshua picked at his food, taking small, cautious bites. Rebecca had just taken her first sip of real coffee when Gabriel entered. He had changed into clean, simple clothes. The morning light emphasized the silver threading through his dark hair and the weathered lines around his eyes. I trust you found your accommodation satisfactory, he said, pouring himself coffee. More than satisfactory, Rebecca replied carefully. Far more generous than I expected for hired help. Gabriel sat across from her. Everyone at Willow Creek has proper quarters. Dignity matters. And how many others live here? She asked, besides Isaiah and Maria's family? Just us for now, Gabriel replied, though we occasionally have visitors who need temporary sanctuary. Rebecca's curiosity deepened. Sanctuary from what? Gabriel studied her over his coffee cup. The world can be hostile to certain people, Mrs. Mitchell, as you've recently discovered. The reference to her own plight was clear. Rebecca felt a flash of indignation, but she couldn't deny the parallel. She too had needed sanctuary from Bradley's vindictiveness. Once you've rested, Gabriel continued, we can discuss your duties in more detail. For now, know that you and your children are safe here. Temporarily, Rebecca insisted. A ghost of a smile touched Gabriel's lips. Of course. The kitchen door opened and Isaiah entered. Fence line secure, he reported to Gabriel. No sign of disturbance. Good. Any word from Running Wolf? Nothing new. They're keeping to the agreement. Isaiah glanced at Rebecca, then back at Gabriel with a raised eyebrow. Gabriel seemed to understand the unspoken question. Mrs. Mitchell knows we have an arrangement with the Blackfoot. She witnessed our encounter on the road. Isaiah's expression remained neutral, but Rebecca sensed his assessment of her had shifted. Then she knows more than most who come here. Circumstances required it, Gabriel replied simply. Rebecca looked between the two men, aware of currents beneath the surface. You said I would be providing medical assistance. Are there often injuries here? Gabriel set down his cup. Sometimes among us, sometimes among visitors. Your skills will be valuable. And what exactly is the nature of this sanctuary you provide? Rebecca pressed, unable to contain her curiosity any longer. Gabriel and Isaiah exchanged a look. It was Isaiah who answered. This ranch sits at a crossroads, Mrs. Mitchell, between settled territory and native land, between past and future. Some people need a place to rest at such crossroads. His metaphorical answer frustrated Rebecca, but before she could push further, Emma spoke up. Are there horses here? Can we see them? Daniel, who had been silently listening, brightened. Many horses. I could show you if your mother allows. Rebecca hesitated, her protective instincts warring with her children's need for distraction. Gabriel seemed to sense her concern. Daniel knows the rules about safety, and the corral is visible from the house. They would be perfectly safe. After a moment, Rebecca nodded. Very well, but stay where I can see you from the window, Emma, and look after Joshua. Emma beamed, the first genuine smile Rebecca had seen from her in days. I will, Mama. The children hurried out, Daniel already chattering about the different horses. Rebecca watched through the window as they approached the fence where several horses grazed peacefully. Your daughter adapts quickly, Gabriel observed. A valuable trait. She's had to, Rebecca replied, a hint of bitterness in her tone. Children shouldn't need to be so resilient. Gabriel nodded, his expression softening slightly. No, they shouldn't. He rose from the table. Rest today. Tomorrow Maria will show you around the house. I have matters to attend to in the north pasture. As he left, Rebecca turned to Maria. Is he always so cryptic? Maria's smile was knowing. Gabriel shares information when necessary, not before, but he is fair and honorable. You'll find no better place for you and your children right now. Rebecca wanted to protest that this was only temporary, but as she watched her children at the corral, Emma animated and even Joshua showing interest as Daniel pointed out a spotted pony, she wondered if her determination to leave was pride rather than practicality. For now her children were safe, fed, and sheltered. That would have to be enough. But the questions about Gabriel and this strange secret ranch had only just begun. The next week passed in a blur of adjustment. Rebecca and her children settled into a new rhythm at Willow Creek. True to his word, Gabriel had Maria show Rebecca the household routines, which were less demanding than she had expected. Work was shared, everyone contributing their skills. Rebecca's medical training was put to use almost immediately when Isaiah returned from checking fence lines with a deep cut on his arm. As she cleaned and stitched the wound in the kitchen, she was aware of Gabriel watching from the doorway. Your technique is excellent, he commented when she finished. Military training shows. Rebecca tied off the thread. It was a long time ago. She looked at him. Isaiah seems to have a lot of duties. Fence lines, security. What exactly is he securing? Gabriel stepped into the room. The ranch is a place of refuge. That makes it a target for those who resent what we do here. Who are we? Rebecca asked, her voice low. And what is it you do, really? Gabriel paused, his gaze steady. We offer a chance at a new life to people who have been cast out or have nowhere else to go. People like you. I am not like them, Rebecca insisted. I am a grieving widow, not a fugitive. Are you so sure? Gabriel's voice was gentle but firm. You're fleeing a powerful man in Mason Bradley, a man who has the law on his side. He has labeled you a troublemaker, a radical. He drove you from your home. He threatened to take your children. What is the difference? Rebecca had no answer. He was right. She was fleeing, but she refused to accept that her situation was the same as a criminal's. Your husband, Daniel, he was also a man who fought for what he believed in, wasn't he? Gabriel said, his tone shifting. For workers' rights and fair pay. Rebecca's chest tightened. He was a good man. He just wanted what was right. And men like that make powerful enemies, Gabriel said, his eyes distant. I know this from personal experience. Rebecca's gaze fell to the scar on his face. What happened to you? Gabriel's hand instinctively went to his cheek. A long story, for another time. But understand this, Mrs. Mitchell. We are all here because we had nowhere else to go. We are a family of sorts, and families protect their own. His words were both a comfort and a warning. She had stumbled into a community with a shared history of struggle and a need for secrecy, a community that had its own enemies. She was no longer just a widow on the run. She was part of something bigger, something dangerous. What do you do when a visitor arrives? She asked, a chill running down her spine. Do you hide them? From whom? From those who would do them harm, Gabriel said, his voice flat. From bounty hunters, from Pinkertons, from vengeful men. We're an oasis in a hostile land, and sometimes that land sends its storms to find us. The door opened and the children ran in, their faces flushed and happy from playing. They were so blissfully unaware of the dark currents swirling around them. Rebecca watched them, her heart torn. She had to protect them. But was this place, this sanctuary, truly safe? Or was it just a different kind of trap? Gabriel's last words echoed in her mind. And sometimes that land sends its storms to find us. The biggest storm of all was about to arrive. The storm hit a week later. It came not as a violent wind, but in the form of a lone rider on a dust-caked horse, his face shadowed by the brim of his hat. He dismounted in front of the house, his movements slow and deliberate. He was a tall man, lean as a whip, with an air of contained danger about him. As he approached, Rebecca saw the glint of a silver badge on his vest. He was a lawman, a U.S. Marshal. Gabriel stepped out onto the porch, his hand resting casually on the hilt of his holstered gun. Isaiah stood at the corner of the house, a rifle held loosely in his hands. Maria stood in the kitchen doorway, her son Daniel clutching her skirt. The children, Emma and Joshua, had been playing in the yard and now stood frozen, their eyes wide. Gabriel Hayes? The marshal's voice was a low growl. That's me. Marshal Gideon Vance. I'm looking for a man named William Black. Rebecca's blood ran cold. The man was a marshal. She had assumed Gabriel was an outlaw but a lawman on his trail. What kind of sanctuary was this? Gabriel's face remained impassive. I don't know any William Black. Seems he was a guest here a few months back, Vance said. A ranch hand. He left with a full purse. Stolen, I'd wager. I've had no such man working here, Gabriel said, his voice as steady as stone. Maybe not as William Black, Vance pressed. He's known for using aliases. Heard he goes by Black Dog sometimes. A real wolf in sheep's clothing. A wolf in sheep's clothing. Rebecca thought of the stories she had heard about outlaws, about men who looked like regular folks but had dark secrets. Was Gabriel one of them? I'm sorry, Marshal, Gabriel said. You're on the wrong trail. Vance's eyes, as sharp as glass shards, swept over Rebecca, Maria, and the children. They rested on Isaiah, then on the peaceful ranch. He seemed to be looking for any sign of a lie. You're a man who helps people in need, aren't you, Hayes? The folks in town, they whisper about you, about how you take in strays. I help where I can, Gabriel said simply. Well, Vance said, I have a warrant for William Black's arrest, for murder and grand larceny. If you're harboring a known fugitive, you're complicit in his crimes. The weight of his words hung in the air. Murder? Larceny? Was this the true cost of their sanctuary? I've told you, Gabriel said, his voice hardening. I don't know the man. Vance's lips curved in a cruel smile. Then you won't mind if I take a look around. Gabriel stood his ground. I do mind. You have no warrant to search this property. A U.S. Marshal doesn't need a warrant in the wilderness, Hayes. You can either step aside or be charged with obstructing justice. The tension was palpable. The children were huddled behind Rebecca, their small bodies trembling. This was the moment of truth. Gabriel had told her that he provided sanctuary, but he hadn't told her who he was providing it to. The stakes had just escalated from mere homelessness to being a possible accomplice to a murderer. She was about to find out exactly what kind of man Gabriel Hayes was, and the answer could mean life or death. Gabriel's eyes met Rebecca's. In that brief glance, she saw a silent communication, a question, a plea. He was asking her to trust him. And for a fleeting moment, she hesitated. Then she remembered Daniel, the stories he told her about men like Bradley, who used their power to crush the weak. The law, she realized, wasn't always just. Sometimes it was a tool for the powerful. And this marshal, Gideon Vance, had the same cold, calculating eyes as Mason Bradley. Rebecca stepped forward, her voice clear and firm. Marshal, I've been a resident here for weeks. I can tell you truthfully, there's no man by that name here. Vance's gaze swung to her, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. And who are you, ma'am? Rebecca Mitchell, a nurse. I can vouch for Mr. Hayes. Vance's smile didn't reach his eyes. A witness, a nurse, and now a character witness. My, what a charitable man Mr. Hayes is. He turned back to Gabriel. You have a loyal group here, Hayes, but I have my sources. I know who comes and goes from this ranch. Your sources are mistaken, Gabriel said, his voice flat. Vance took a step closer, his hand hovering over his gun. One last chance, Hayes. Where is he? The silence stretched, thick and heavy. A gust of wind stirred the dust at their feet. The air was charged with a deadly tension. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the front door. He's not here, Marshal. It was Maria. She stepped out, her expression defiant. William Black left a month ago. He was a troublemaker, a drinker. He stole money from my husband and ran off. Vance's eyes narrowed. Your husband? He sneered. I was told Maria was a widow. Maria's face didn't falter. I am. My husband, Joaquin, was a good man. William Black killed him. A gasp escaped Rebecca's lips. A new twist. A new layer of deception. Where is William Black now? Vance asked, his voice low and dangerous. He went south, toward Mexico. He said he was going to join up with some bandits. Vance's gaze flickered between Maria and Gabriel. He seemed to be weighing the story, looking for a hole. Then his eyes settled on the young boy, Daniel, who was still clutching his mother's skirt. Is that right, boy? Vance asked, his voice a sly, coaxing tone. Did you see William Black kill your papa? Daniel looked at his mother, then at Gabriel. He said nothing. He had not spoken since his father's death. He's a shy boy, Maria said, her voice strained. He hasn't spoken since that day. Vance's lips twisted into a cruel smile. A convenient silence. Makes a man wonder what else you're hiding. He turned back to Gabriel. I'll be back, Hayes, and next time I won't be so polite. This time I'll bring more than a badge. I'll bring a search party. Vance mounted his horse and rode away, a cloud of dust in his wake. As he disappeared over the rise, the tension broke. Gabriel visibly relaxed. Isaiah lowered his rifle. Maria sank onto the porch step, bearing her face in her hands. Rebecca went to her, kneeling beside her. Maria, what was that? Your husband. A murder? Maria looked up, her eyes filled with tears. My husband's name was Joaquin. He was a good man, a good father. He worked for Mason Bradley at the mine. He was a mule skinner, a good one, but he was Mexican. Bradley called him a lazy drunk. I don't understand, Rebecca said. Who was William Black? He doesn't exist, Maria said, her voice a broken whisper. I made him up for the marshal. Why? Because the marshal was looking for someone else, someone who is here right now, someone who needs sanctuary, someone who is very, very dangerous. Rebecca's blood ran cold. The web of lies was getting thicker. Maria had risked her own safety and her son's to protect a fugitive. But who was it? Who was the real criminal? The man who had taken her and her children in? Her heart pounded against her ribs. She was living with a murderer. and Gabriel was protecting him. A new, terrifying thought crept into her mind. Maybe the man they were hiding was the one who was truly a danger. But who could it be? The next day, Rebecca's suspicions grew when she found Gabriel and Isaiah working on a hidden door in the cellar. The door was expertly crafted, blending seamlessly with the wall. When she asked about it, Gabriel simply said it was a root cellar, but she knew better. It was a place to hide, a place to protect the secrets of this ranch. She was a nurse. She knew when someone was lying. Gabriel was lying. That night she couldn't sleep. The house, once a safe haven, now felt like a cage. She was trapped with a man who was hiding a murderer, and she had nowhere else to go. She heard footsteps outside her door. She held her breath, listening. The footsteps stopped. A low voice, a man's voice, was speaking softly. But it wasn't Gabriel. It was a different voice, one she didn't recognize. The voice of a stranger in the house. The sound of her son Joshua's soft snores from the next room was her only anchor. She got up, her heart pounding. She crept to the door and listened. She couldn't make out the words, but she could hear the tone. It was hushed, urgent, a meeting, a secret meeting. The voice stopped. The footsteps moved away. She waited. Waited for what? She didn't know. She felt a wave of fear. She had to know. She had to know who else was here. She had to find the truth. She opened her door and peeked out. The hallway was dark. A sliver of light from the main room showed Gabriel talking to Maria. They were whispering. She couldn't hear their words. Rebecca had to find out. The truth. Her children's safety depended on it. She had to find the source of that strange voice. She had to see who else lived in this house. This mystery was a puzzle she had to solve, and she was getting closer to the heart of it. She waited until the house was completely silent. Then, with her heart in her throat, she tiptoed down the hall, following the faint scent of stale tobacco and gun oil. It led her to a small room at the back of the house, a room she hadn't seen before. The door was ajar. She pushed it open a crack and peered inside. The room was filled with medical supplies. A doctor's bag sat on a table, its leather worn and cracked. On the wall hung a faded map of the territory with red and blue pins marking different locations. But what really caught her eye was a man lying on a bed, his face pale and his breathing shallow. He was wounded, and the man sitting beside him, holding his hand, was not Gabriel. It was the man she had heard whispering in the hallway. He was a small man with a wispy beard and kind eyes. He was wearing an old-fashioned doctor's coat, the kind she had seen in the military hospitals during the war. Her breath caught in her throat. The man on the bed was the fugitive, the murderer the marshal was looking for. But why was he wounded? And who was this man? This doctor? Suddenly the door creaked behind her. She turned, a gasp of alarm escaping her lips. Gabriel was standing there, his face a mask of surprise and grim acceptance. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice a low warning. "This is not your concern." "My children's safety is my concern," she whispered fiercely. "Who is this man? Is he the one the marshal is looking for?" Gabriel sighed. "Yes, his name is William Black." "And he's a murderer?" "No," Gabriel said, his voice flat. "He's an escaped slave." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. An escaped slave. Not a murderer. Not a thief. Just a man fighting for his freedom. The entire narrative she had built in her mind shattered. The marshal was not seeking justice. He was seeking a human being to return to bondage. And Gabriel wasn't a criminal. He was a conductor on the Underground Railroad, a hidden network helping people escape to freedom. Her children weren't in danger from a murderer. They were in danger from the very people who were supposed to protect them, the law. And Mason Bradley, her persecutor, was just a small piece of a much larger, darker puzzle. The next morning, everything looked different. The log house, the outbuildings, the fields, the mountains, they all seemed to hold a new meaning. Rebecca watched Gabriel as he worked, the truth of his mission shining in his eyes. He wasn't a rancher. He was a protector, a guardian. The ranch wasn't just a home, it was a way station on the road to freedom. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. The reason for his isolation, the reason for the cryptic conversations, the reason for the armed watchman. They were not defending a murderer. They were defending a principle. They were defending a human being's right to be free. Rebecca found Gabriel in the barn, mending a saddle. "The man the marshal is looking for," she said, her voice low. "He's a runaway slave, not a murderer." Gabriel looked at her, his expression grim. "He's both. The marshal is lying. William didn't kill anyone. The man he shot was a bounty hunter who was trying to drag him back to his former master. It was self-defense. But the marshal, Gideon Vance, is on Bradley's payroll. Bradley wants to find William and return him to his master for the bounty. And he wants to use William to destroy me, to prove that I am harboring criminals." A cold feeling of dread settled in Rebecca's stomach. Why would Bradley do that? "Because of my father," Gabriel said, "and because of the railroad, the Underground Railroad." He gestured to the vast prairie stretching out before them. "My father was an abolitionist. He helped slaves escape long before the war. He set up this ranch as a safe haven, a place where people could rest and heal before they made their way north to Canada. Bradley's father was a slave owner. He lost a fortune when his slaves escaped. He blamed my father. The hatred between the families goes back generations." Rebecca's mind reeled. The rivalry between Gabriel and Bradley wasn't just about land or money. It was about history. It was about slavery. And she and her children had just walked right into the middle of it. The man she thought was a villain was a hero. And the lawman, the hero, was a villain. "What do we do now?" she whispered. "We wait," Gabriel said. "The marshal will be back. He's been watching the ranch. He knows we're here. He knows William is here. He just needs proof." "But he doesn't have a warrant. He can't search the ranch." "He doesn't need a warrant," Gabriel said. "He's a U.S. Marshal. He's operating under the Fugitive Slave Act. He can search anywhere he wants. He can even deputize local men to help him." He paused, his eyes distant. "He'll use Mason Bradley's men, and they won't stop until they've found William, or until they've burned this ranch to the ground." The stakes had just escalated again. It wasn't just about William. It was about the entire ranch, and everyone on it. Rebecca's children were in the crossfire of a war that had been going on for generations. A war that had just gotten very, very real. A war that she was now a part of, and a war that would end in fire and bloodshed. The sun was a blazing furnace in the sky when the search party arrived. Not just Marshal Vance, but a dozen of Mason Bradley's men, their faces grim and their rifles at the ready. Vance rode in front, a cold smile on his lips. "Gabriel Hayes," he called out, "I'm here to conduct a lawful search for the fugitive William Black. You can either cooperate, or I can charge you and everyone on this ranch with aiding and abetting a fugitive." Gabriel stood on the porch, his face a mask of stone. "You have no proof he's here." "I have my suspicions, Hayes, and that's all I need." He gestured to his men. They fanned out, their boots kicking up dust as they began to search the outbuildings. Rebecca watched them, her heart pounding. They were getting closer. They were going to find the hidden room. They were going to find William. "Mama," Emma whispered, her small hand clutching Rebecca's skirt. "What's happening?" "Stay close," Rebecca said, her voice a low command. She had to do something. She had to buy them time. She had an idea. It was crazy. It was dangerous. But it was their only chance. She went to Gabriel, her eyes meeting his. "I can help," she said. "How?" "I can distract them. I can lead them away from the cellar." Gabriel's eyes widened. "That's insane. You'll put yourself in danger." "I'm already in danger," she said. "We all are. We have to do this. We have to buy William time to escape." He nodded, a silent acknowledgement of her courage. "What's your plan?" "I'll pretend to be a witness. I'll tell them I saw William, but I'll tell them I saw him going the other way, toward the mountains." Gabriel nodded again. "It's a long shot, but it might work." Rebecca took a deep breath. She walked out into the yard, her head held high. She approached Marshal Vance. "Marshal," she said, her voice trembling just a little, "I can help you." Vance's eyes narrowed. "What do you know, ma'am?" "I saw him," she said, her voice a little louder. "I saw the fugitive. He was wounded. I tried to help him, but he was scared. He said he was going to the Blackfoot to seek refuge." Vance's gaze swung to the distant mountains, the same mountains that bordered the Blackfoot hunting grounds. He knew that the Blackfoot had a long-standing agreement with Gabriel. He knew that if the fugitive was there, he would be a long way from home. "Which way did he go?" he asked. "Toward the mountains. He said he was going to Running Wolf to get a horse." Vance's eyes flickered. Running Wolf was the Blackfoot chief. He knew that Gabriel had a relationship with him. He also knew that the Blackfoot would not take kindly to a search party. It would be a dangerous chase, a chase into a hostile territory. He had to make a choice. Chase a wounded man into a dangerous territory or risk an open conflict with a local tribe. "Men!" he called out. "We're going to the mountains." The men, their faces a mix of disappointment and relief, mounted their horses and rode off toward the mountains, a cloud of dust in their wake. Rebecca watched them go, her heart pounding in her chest. She had done it. She had bought them time. "That was a fool's errand, but you did it," Gabriel said, a look of awe on his face. "You saved us all." Rebecca didn't feel like a hero. She felt terrified, but she had to keep a straight face. She had to be strong for her children. They had just escaped a deadly situation. But the truth was, they weren't free yet, not by a long shot. And the real twist was that this entire event wasn't just a distraction. It was a new piece of the puzzle, a new layer of the plan, because Gabriel had a plan that was more intricate and more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. The next day a storm rolled in, not of dust and horses, but of wind and rain. It was a violent, cleansing storm, the kind that washes away the sins of the past. As the rain fell, Gabriel came to Rebecca. He had a map in his hands, a map of the territory. "I need your help," he said. "With what?" "With this," he said, pointing to a small isolated cabin deep in the mountains. "This is a safe house. It's a day's ride from here. William needs to get there. The Blackfoot will help him, but he's still weak. He needs a nurse. He needs you." Rebecca's heart pounded. He was asking her to go with the fugitive, to put herself in mortal danger. "I can't," she said, her voice shaking. "I have my children." "I know," Gabriel said, his voice soft. "But this is our only chance. The marshal will be back. He'll have a real warrant this time, and he'll have more men. He'll tear this place apart. This is the only way. You're the only one who can help him. You're the only one who can save us all." Rebecca looked at her children. They were playing with Maria's son, Daniel, their faces flushed with happiness. They were safe, for now. But for how long? She knew that she couldn't stay. She couldn't put them in danger. She had to go. She had to help. She had to be brave for them. "I'll go," she said. Gabriel nodded, a look of relief washing over his face. "Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. But I have one condition," she said. "What is it?" "You have to promise me that you will protect my children, that you will keep them safe, that you will get them out of here if anything happens to me." "I promise him," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "On my father's grave." She nodded. She trusted him. She didn't know why, but she did. He was a man of his word. She packed a small bag, a few clothes, a Bible, a small pouch of coins. She said goodbye to her children. She held them tight, whispering a promise that she would be back. She said goodbye to Maria and Isaiah. And then she rode out into the storm, with a man she had just met, to save a man she had never seen. She was no longer a victim. She was no longer a widow. She was a woman of action. She was a woman who had just joined the Underground Railroad, and she was about to face the most dangerous journey of her life. The ride was brutal. The storm raged around them, the rain lashing at their faces, the wind howling in their ears. They rode in silence, Gabriel and Rebecca on two horses, William Black on a third, a quiet, stoic figure, his face pale and his breathing shallow. Rebecca rode beside him, her heart in her throat, her mind racing. This was a man she was putting her life on the line for, a man she knew nothing about. As they rode, the landscape changed. The rolling hills gave way to the jagged peaks of the mountains. The trees grew thicker, the air colder. They were in the Blackfoot territory now, the territory that was supposed to be a safe haven. But was it? She had to trust Gabriel. She had to believe that he had a plan. They came to a small hidden cabin nestled in a grove of trees. It was a small, unassuming cabin, but it was a beacon of hope. They dismounted, their bodies weary and sore. Gabriel helped William into the cabin. He was weak, too weak to make it to Canada. He needed a doctor. He needed her. Rebecca went to work. She cleaned his wound, stitched it up, and gave him a poultice of herbs to reduce the fever. She worked through the night, a silent guardian over a man who had risked everything for his freedom. As she worked, she saw not a fugitive, but a human being, a man with a family, a home, a life that had been stolen from him. She saw a man who was fighting for his right to live. She saw a man who was fighting for the same thing she was fighting for, a future for her children. The next morning, the fever had broken. William was weak, but he was alive. He looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you, ma'am. You saved my life." Rebecca smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "You're welcome. It was the right thing to do." "Now what?" she asked Gabriel. "Now we wait," he said. "The Blackfoot will come. They'll take him the rest of the way." As they waited, Rebecca learned more about Gabriel. She learned about his father's unwavering commitment to the cause. She learned about the network of safe houses, the secret codes, the intricate web of trust that had been built over generations. She learned that this was not just a ranch. It was a legacy of hope and freedom. Just as the sun began to set, a group of Blackfoot warriors rode into the clearing. They were led by a tall, dignified man with a long braid. "Running Wolf." Gabriel greeted him with a silent nod, a gesture of respect. Running Wolf dismounted and went to William. He spoke to him in his native tongue. William nodded. A silent understanding passed between them. The Blackfoot were going to take him to Canada. They were going to ensure his freedom. But before he left, William looked at Rebecca. "I'll never forget you, ma'am," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "You're a true friend." Rebecca nodded, a lump in her throat. She had found a new purpose, a new family, a new life. And it was all because of a man she had once mistrusted, a man who had risked everything to do what was right, a man who had given her and her children a second chance. The journey back to the ranch was quiet. Rebecca and Gabriel rode side by side, a comfortable silence between them. The storm had passed, leaving the air fresh and clean. The world seemed to have been washed clean. When they arrived at Willow Creek, Rebecca saw her children running toward her, their faces filled with relief. They hugged her tight, their small bodies a warm comfort against her. She was home. She was safe. She was with her family. The next day, Marshal Vance returned. This time he was alone. His face was grim. He dismounted and approached Gabriel. "You win, Hayes," he said, his voice flat. "I know he's not here. I know you sent him to the Blackfoot. I'm not going to cause a war for a bounty. Not for Mason Bradley. Not for anyone." He looked at Rebecca. "You're a smart woman, Mrs. Mitchell, and a liar. But you did it for the right reasons. This time." He mounted his horse and rode away. He was not a hero, but he was not a monster. He was a man who had just done the right thing. He had just made a choice. He had chosen peace over profit. He had chosen justice over the law. And in a way, he had become a part of the legacy of Willow Creek. He was part of the story now. Rebecca turned to Gabriel. "What happens now?" "Now," he said, a ghost of a smile on his lips, "we live." Rebecca and her children stayed at the ranch. They found a home. They found a family. Rebecca became the resident nurse, tending to the sick and the wounded. She found her purpose, her place in the world. Her children thrived. Joshua began to speak again. His first word was, "Mama." Her heart swelled with love and gratitude. The ranch became a beacon of hope, a safe harbor in a hostile world, a place where people of all races, all backgrounds could find refuge. It was a place where a new kind of family was being forged, a family of choice, not of blood, a family of outcasts, of fugitives, of dreamers, a family that was fighting for a better world. And Rebecca, the grieving widow, the woman on the run, had found her place among them. She had found her strength, her courage, her purpose. She had found a home. She had found a new life, and she was ready for whatever came next. The story of Willow Creek Ranch is not just a story about a hidden sanctuary. It's a story about the power of hope, the resilience of the human spirit, and the enduring legacy of those who dare to do what is right. It's a story that is still being written, a story that is still being told, and it's a story that you can be a part of. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe.